We can start with Dave interviewing for jobs. Which company is
I
interviewing?
can't. I'm on a strict NDA for some of these.
Everyone can say that how great that company is.
We haven't seen Dave for a while. The last episode, the audience have seen Dave was May 2023.
What
a
the
lot has happened in between.
Not really. I lost my job and I've been playing video games for 6-7 months. I haven't done shit.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hypnosis? Like sleep.
No, it's for me to align the episode later. But anyway,
Okay. Sorry.
So welcome to the 32nd episode of the LLB podcast. This is live and in studio with us. We got Dave Chang after a long year, probably. He's back.
Hi, everyone.
How's it been, Dave?
Excellent.
Do you want to give everyone a quick personal update?
No, it's
No, you're good?
It's fine.
Okay. We're just happy to have you. June's joining us again.
Hello. Live from KL, all four of us.
Yes. And then Jangan, he drove up from Singapore.
From ground floor, and this building apparently only allows you to park on level 6, and it's all double parking. So this is like
Yes,
something
it's
I've never seen in my
very
life.
interesting building design. I spoke with Alex about this. You know.
Is that common in Malaysia?
No, not this
No,
design.
it's just this building.
We can introduce you to the owner later. And
Yes, if you like to talk to the owner.
Yeah, we can introduce you then.
Okay.
You can tell about your complaints.
No time for that.
He's upstairs.
Yes. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a quick VC update from last year because Dave actually last year was raising money in the US around May. Different experience, not really VC, but I guess you were raising money. So you were talking to investors and LPs. And also recently you said in the past few months you had some interesting conversations with LPs too.
Wait, why are you not wearing a...
I don't have, because I don't have another one. So
Why do we have to wear one?
because you need to hear your own level monitor yourself better than myself. I could see and I can adjust by looking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sophisticated.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Yeah,
you
he
have
has
a-
more experience.
I mean, but like
You
I
knows how to
ideally I
moderate.
would have it. So, anyway, so back to the topic, right? So, a lot has changed from 2023 till like now. I think in general, like I did some research. There's supposed to be like an anticipation of a funding rebound. I don't know, but it seems to be like trending more towards selective investments. AI seems to be very hot. Biotech, crypto completely disappeared from the scene. Right? Even though there's been a big rebound in crypto prices for 2023, not to the peaks, but still very good recovery. There's signs of IPO market, heating up again. And there's different focus on sectors going to 2024. But I don't know, maybe in general, Dave, you could start for your experiences. Since you were raising from last year, the last episode you were in till now, a lot has changed. Anything you've been talking to investor friends, LPs directly, raising money, or maybe talking to founders even? Like, what's the sentiment out there?
Well, okay. So contextually, what I was doing last year was starting around middle of last year, June, July. I was trying to raise a small fund for industrial real estate assets in the United States. And the basic hypothesis is you have a huge mismatch in supply and demand fundamentals in the industrial real estate sector. Demand being driven by really three things, right? Number one, a lot of reshoring and onshoring. That's sort of driven by global geopolitics. Number two, a increase in interest rates. So usually when interest rates go back up, investors go back to hard money generating assets as a hedge. And then the third is just sort of like overall technological advancement. So, e-commerce continues to grow. That necessitates investment in distribution infrastructure, hub and spoke system, data centers, et cetera, right? And then the supply side of that is essentially since the US went off the gold standard in like 1970, there's been like a pretty distinct lack of investment in the industrial sector in the US. A stat that people like to use a lot is I think the average age of a warehouse in the US is like 50 years old or 45 years old, which for most modern use cases, which means that a lot of these assets aren't suitable for modern use cases.
Why is that the case? I mean,
So a lot of money. Okay, so yeah, it's a good question. So for example, right, a lot of industrial real estate right now is driven by e-commerce, and so that necessitates a certain ceiling because they stack the pallets up, they stack the warehouse racks up, right? So typically people look for things that are like at least 16 to 20 feet in height, ceiling height, right?
what's
Whereas a lot
that in meters?
just divide by 3.
Okay.
Yeah, give or take, right? So like 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, something like that, right? Whereas most of these older assets, because they were built in like the 50s or 60s, their ceiling heights are like probably like 12 to 14, which means they're essentially unusable for a lot of these use cases, or they're not in the right locations, right? The economic nexuses of 40 years ago are not necessarily the same as they are now, right? They might not have enough loading docks. There's a bunch of reasons, like, right, we don't need to get into that.
But if something has not been updated for 40 years, that means that there's not enough incentive to update that or upgrade that.
Yeah, correct. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like I said, if you think about the 3 main drivers of demand, right, those have not been relevant in the last 40 years. Industrialization in the US was on a downtrend for the last 40, 50 years, right? Money was free for the last 40, 50 years. Technology has only been a factor the last 20 years, whatever, since e-commerce started in the US. So that's like 1997 if you use the founding of Amazon, right? So that's what I'm saying. Anyway, long story short, so this has been my side project for the last 2 years. I've been working with my partner in the US. We've acquired a decent amount of assets. So as of to date, it's about 32 million US dollars in assets acquired. DPI on that is actually quite high. It's 0.57. It's over the course of 2 years. TVPI is 1.4. IRR is a fuzzy number anyway, but it's like 56%, right? So my assumption was that so it's a new fund, it's small, et cetera, but like with on the back of these numbers, right? Because the DPI number is quite important because that's actual money returned. That we would be able to drum up a substantial amount of interest for the fund. I was very quickly disabused of that notion. I talked to maybe 30 to 40 LPs, family offices, because it's not much. It was like a $10 to $20 million fund, so the check size would have been like 1 to 2, so not institutional or anything of that nature, right? High net worth type people and small family offices. And so this was Q3, Q4 of last year, and majority of the feedback I got was like, look, dude, we don't know what's coming down the pipe. We're getting like 5% on our FD, and we're quite happy to sit on our, and collect 5% on our FD for the next 18 months until things work its way through. So there's more clarity, right? Yeah. So that's been my experience, my contacts with the LP side of the ecosystem. Also, I think this is probably what gave me a bit of trouble. Like, industrial real estate is kind of one of these asset classes where it's a bit niche, right? A lot of people don't understand. I mean, it's real estate, but people, you talk about like manufacturing facilities and warehouses, and a lot of times people's eyes kind of just like roll to the back of their heads, and they're like, I don't know. And then it's like, it falls into the I don't understand bucket, therefore I'm not going to do it, right? Yeah. So, and that it's not interesting enough for me to like learn about it to understand. That's kind of the bucket that it falls into, which is kind of funny because if you really think about like in the context of VCs, how many of these investors actually invest or understand, the tech companies that they're investing in? Like biotech is a great example. Like people like oh, biotech, but like I'm investing in biotech fund. Like that's cool, but do you actually understand the science behind it?
Would you argue the majority of those investors just follow the herd then? I mean, of course, there's a percentage probably do know.
I would argue that 90% of VCs in the region just follow the herd. I mean, you see this, right? It comes in waves. Like in the 20 teens, it was like e-commerce, and then it became like micro mobility. So all like the scooter companies, the bike companies. Then it was crypto for a while. Then there was something in between, and now it's AI, right? So I 100%
Could you decompose that a little bit? When you say that people are following the herd, but what exactly is that? Because I mean, they do calculations, and these guys might not have the best insights about a particular industry, but they're smart people, so they have done calculations. And when you say that they are following the herd, it means that, okay, they are trying to anticipate the sentiment of people who are doing following investments and stuff. They said, okay, I look at this company, not because this company will become the greatest company, but this company is most likely to get, following investment, most likely to exit, right? I mean, but that changes.
So that's a good point, right? So my hypothesis is in the last 10 to 15 years, most VCs in the ecosystem here were just momentum trading into the next round.
I agree.
So, and that's fair. I think
it's a play. It can work.
You're right. You're right, John Gunn. Like, I don't think you should always assume that people do the things that they do, not because they're stupid, because they're incentivized. You're right. These are intelligent, thoughtful people for the most part, right? And then I think it's a question of like understanding what their incentive structures are. And I think in that environment, their incentive structures were like, yeah, I will invest in micromobility because I'm just using micromobility as an example. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, although we could.
Even though they exist, we know who they are.
We know who they are. Yeah, like micromobility is hot. Sequoia has invested in this thing. Therefore, it's high likelihood that I can raise a follow-on investment.
I mean, it's something I don't need to spend like a month to educate my follow-on investors what that is,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
unlike industrial real estate.
Yeah, correct. Like, oh, it's scooters. I understand like micromobility and scooters, and then like it's a high chance that they will to raise follow-on investment. Therefore, I can mark up my fund, even though it's not DPI, it's TVPI. Therefore, I can raise like my next fund, and then so on. And I mean, I think we've all talked ad nauseum about this, right? And I think that's like, but that's changed, right? That's no longer true, and I think that this is like a shift that a lot of people. Now I'm like purely hypothesizing. I haven't talked to them. I haven't talked to the VC investor fund site in a long time, but my guess is a lot of them are like trying to work out what their new model and strategy is going to be. So that's my experience.
Jun, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yes. I think from what I hear with Dave and from a few meetings with a few VCs in the past previous days, what's different since interest rates have come up again to a positive number, say 4%, 5%, 6%, compared to 0% for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Is now investors are very okay with just saying, it's not safe. I put money in the bank, I'm getting money.
Yeah, correct.
And on such large amount of money, it's sizable for me to not do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly
So the
what's happening.
hurdle that VCs or LPs have to clear before investment makes sense to them is much higher than before.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Especially for
Because a
larger
lot of
funds.
LPs will not do a drawdown because they say, I'm not going to invest. I have 5% in the bank.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean,
Yeah, so we're going back to a time when investments were thought in this way, right? Would this return cash flow? Would this investment return money compared to just having money in the bank?
you're absolutely right. It's a denominator question, right? Like every one of us that's done any underwriting understands that the most important number is probably the number that you divide by.
Yeah.
And then when that number is like really, really low, it doesn't really matter. But then like once that number becomes like, like an actual number, then your returns are become relevant again.
So Joe and Alex, you remember that we went to Brazil in 2014 for some event, and at the event I just sneaked out to meet some of my some inside classmates. Some of them work for family offices, some of them work for VCs. And of course, at that time, I think the sort of tech scene in Southeast Asia started to heat up a little bit. But I was talking to people there, they're saying that I still remember there's this friend who's managing sort of money for his boss. He was telling me that, look, my boss is sort of risk-free. Return is like 9%, mine is 6%. So if I invest in a VC, I mean, how much return do I need to demand to justify this risk premium? That was 2014.
Yeah. But also, there's an interesting report that came out like about a year ago, and it was actually looking at the DPI number for like Southeast Asia VC, and it was terrible.
But is it? Are there any funds that have been existing long enough to actually return
There are.
money?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, think about like someone like 500. They've been investing in
for
the
sure they have
ecosystem
DPI,
for
right?
like
Yeah.
those are
But
probably the only
still
ones.
only a handful.
And also
Tiny.
Vertex selling all their grab holdings in
true.
2019.
The government funds,
It's been I don't. Okay, so now the
This is one big cycle.
glasses dude is going to like call me out, but whatever. I don't care, right?
Glass man.
Glasses man. But the number was atrocious. It was like 0.2 or something.
Yeah.
It was like as like an asset class, it just like the performance is abysmal, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's also, it's we've probably gone through one full cycle and now people are starting to reorient.
Well, fundamentally, do you think they're just bad momentum traders, or it's not? There's no substance, or are we shifting? Are we changing now? Do you think we'll be able to?
No, I
this
think
new class of investors coming up for this generation be able to actually return good DPI.
No, I think it's just simple entry and exit. They just probably bought at the top of the market, and now they're selling at like not the bottom, but like it's a pretty low point in the market, right?
Yeah.
And also if you think about the holding period, once you factor in holding period, then the numbers look truly atrocious, right? Because these things are like incredibly liquid, and they've been sitting on these. I mean, if you're lucky, maybe you made a little bit of money, but I would venture that like 95% of the cohorts are just dead or zombies at this point.
That's what the model is supposed to do, You have
Yes,
like 1
correct.
2%
Yes, correct.
making like outsized, 100x, 1000x.
Correct. But the issue is there haven't been enough outsized exits to raise the average, right? You're right. Yeah, you're right. The model is 90% will fail, or the number is like 66% will return no money at all. Like 20% will return like just bare minimum capital, and the last 10% will make all your money back. But then the problem is that last 10%, either their returns are quite poor in the context, or they just haven't happened yet.
You were saying something, Jung-Gun?
Yeah, I was. I mean, most of us, aside from Dave, came from operator background. So when you look at friction on the market, trying to build tech businesses in this region, we look at, how much like consumers are really paying for certain stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've been struggling to understand what can give you outsized return. What can be like $10 billion company in this region, aside from asset play.
I don't know. That's a great question. I also
our biggest liquid successes are not living up to their valuations, like Grab IPOing and Gojek. Why is that the case? Is it weird? Is it a timing thing? Is it going to grow with the economies and middle class, and it gets to that $10 billion valuation, or what? Or just fundamentally, it's just not there. These categories, we can't have big companies in that size.
No, I don't think it's a.
Oh, I think they're growing. The revenues are growing.
The revenues are growing.
Quarter on quarter every year. The valuation is like, is like what the valuation metric is. Depends on what the interest rate is. Depends on how hot the market is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as companies, they are increasing their revenue, stuff like that. More users spend more.
No, I agree. I think I think it's possible to build large companies at scale here, right? And I know I've been quite bearish on Grab and C at various points over the course of this endeavor. But my perspective is always, it's never been that they can't be big companies, they can't be successful companies. Yeah. It's always that they don't, like the fundamentals versus what they're traded at don't make sense. So I'm looking at it from like a very much like an asset value perspective, right? Which isn't to say that like in 10 years you can't grow into it, right? And I think that's kind of what happened is like people invested and they were thinking, I know this, like a lot of the investment thesis is like, growing middle class, and then
it's not growing fast enough.
It's just not growing fast. Correct. The middle class is not growing fast enough. There will come a point where it will grow into it, but people were projecting 10 years, and I think that number is now looking like a lot like it's a 20-year.
Yeah, so if there's no new products, right? I mean, Grab had one thing that they were shooting for, with this high multiple that they were trading at IPO, that they were going to be big in finance.
Yeah, correct.
But I think they've lost that spot, huh?
I
think Alipay is the leader now in the region. How did that happen?
I think Shopee is a leader in that. I can explain more.
In Singapore or what?
Across the board. Maybe it was the exception of Thailand.
From what I see, Alipay and all its regional partnerships are all e-wallets across the region. In Thailand and Malaysia, it's only Singapore Shopee is dealing. Shopee Pay.
I mean, Shopee has digital financial services which are huge.
To merchants.
In Singapore? Or where?
No. To consumers. You never make money from lending to merchants. I mean, those are limited liability companies. You don't lend to limited liability companies. You lend to consumers who are on limited liability.
Correct. Bank debt chase you everywhere.
You can't declare bankruptcy, in most countries.
So this is just my experience in Malaysia, where I think Touch and Go is Alipay subsidiary, right?
It is, yeah. You can use it in China, actually.
Yeah, you can almost use it in every Southeast Asian country, almost.
Yeah. So I think they've won, right? They've won.
I think in terms of payment, Touch and Go in Malaysia, what's that thing in the Philippines? The one owned by Globe, which is invested by Ant.
I forget the name, but I know you're
Suddenly can't,
GlobePay, MPay, something like that.
Something like that,
GPay, GlobePay. It's not Grab.
Gcash.
But all we know is across the region is not Grab.
Gcash is doing very well. I think Touch and Go is doing pretty well. Shopee Pay itself is limited, but Shopee's sort of lending products are doing very well. And I do think that a reason why Shopee Pay is limited is that Shopee Pay doesn't have an app. So it can't operate the way it wants to. I mean, sort of it's embedded in Shopee. So you want to do a promotion, you have to negotiate with Shopee.
Yeah.
But I think that's potential they're not leveraging. And coming back to Grab, I mean, you see that the company is almost boring now, right? It's
There's
like,
no more products.
it's like one target, they hit
Yeah.
it, another target, they hit it. I mean, which
Well,
is
that's the way you should grow.
which is probably good. I mean, you see that, okay, I mean, the user number is growing gradually, and gradually they start to segment the users now into like 3 segments, like the what do you call that? The saver one, the premium one, the standard one. But I think there's much more they could do to capture more spending power. I mean, before they would standardize the product, right? Everyone gets the same discounts. And now they have 3
You
tiers.
think so? I think it's been 3 years without any new product from Grab. 3 years, 4 years. The last product was just the finance product.
Well, they have their
Yeah,
bank.
they
They have their
pay.
bank now in Malaysia. That just-
GX Bank?
GX Bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's starting, huh?
that it's been in the market for like a few months. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Like you said, the GX Bank. This is a region that traditional banks have customers already in the banking
But
system.
I heard a rumor that's not actually tied to an actual bank license. Like if you put your money in, you can't take it out apparently.
Touch and Go has that bank too. It is like
Touch and Go doesn't have a bank, right?
Yeah,
It
we
was like,
CIMB, yes, over here.
they
All
use
my
it- they
accounts
use it
are
back.
paying
Yeah.
interest at like
Using-
4%.
so basically, you use Touch and Go wallet,
Uh-huh.
and the money actually goes to CIMB account.
Yes, it's
So
held there.
Touch and Go becomes a customer acquisition tool for
Yes,
CIMB
yes.
in a way.
No, it's just another feature where it's a savings account built into the product.
Okay, that's like banking and service kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
So, but the other platform players are trying to be a bank themselves, or
No.
Yeah.
No, that's what they are. Yeah.
but they haven't really acquired full banking license across the region, right? It's not. It's like not. It's like
No,
Well,
I
they-
don't think that's a
Right?
strategy. I think Alipay, is lead gen for banks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different.
mean,
strategy.
It can be a bank someday. I don't know, but it doesn't seem that way, right?
Yeah.
Jack tried, but
We did talk about this many episodes ago. Like, how would fintech banking kind of unfold? One was like you have to work with the infrastructure banks, and the other one was like they're going to try to be a bank themselves. So I guess we're seeing a divergence.
The objective for lots of large platforms is that you have this large user base, right, and try to monetize that. You probably have some data one way or another, and of course the best way to monetize that is lending. The interest spread. I mean, you can charge fees, but I don't think you can make much money from fees in this region. So how do you make that work? I mean, you lend and scale, and you can control the risk, and then on the other side you have the low risk capital. I think the reason why many companies went to the bank route is because you can acquire low risk capital in terms of deposits. I mean,
Yeah, correct.
Shopee's C Bank was promising its consumers 7%
wow.
deposit rate in
Singapore?
in Indonesia when they first started. I think now it has lowered to like 5%, but 7% as a cost of capital for the lending business on Shopee is very cheap because I mean corporate loans. I mean they get like what 12-14%.
Well, usually also those promos are like, I mean, this gets into like a regulatory thing. It's like it says 7% on the top, but it's like 7% over like 3 months or something, right? So effectively, it's like 2%.
So which is like much cheaper.
Which
cost
much,
of-
yeah, exactly, correct. It's much cheaper.
So yeah, so how, I mean, of course, if you have a choice, trying to get a low cost capital without being regulated as a bank, I think that would be preferred by most players. But if you don't have a choice, then you go for the bank route, and you try to isolate the bank from your the rest of your operations, so that the rest doesn't become sort of heavily burdened with the banking regulations.
Okay.
Why are we talking about banks?
Yeah.
So,
We
so
kind
sad.
of diverged off that.
No, we're just talking about what companies would grow, in high speed. What's the next big thing in this region?
Yeah.
So I think we talk about so ride hailing, food delivery is done. I think banking and payments is going through a
do you
growth
mean by
phase right
done?
now.
I mean, it's just they're just growing at its.
Yeah, it's just growing as fast as it can
correct,
now, right now.
Correct. It's already at the peak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no more money to like I mean they're quite mature, right? Everyone knows about them. It's growing. It doesn't need to have any more subsidies.
Yeah.
It'll grow on its own, be optimized. So what's the next big sector? That would grow up. I think would be somewhere along the lines of
Oh,
electrification.
I remember why. We were talking about what could be $10 billion companies in the region.
Oh,
What big
definitely,
companies.
I mean, companies I don't know,
Yeah.
but where's the next 100 billion going to be spent? That's going to grow fast. I think it will be electric cars. Electric cars or renewables. But to the consumer, it will be electric cars, I guess.
The one that ties into the China topic, I guess. So,
Well, yeah.
do you want to review the bull case for China, and do you want to go contrarian against it, or?
Aside from Indonesia, no other country has leverage on this sector, right?
For what? Electric cars?
On
Electric
EV.
cars.
Oh, there's
EV?
Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. I think they're
No.
all going to be
I
manufactured.
mean,
here.
what they have is skilled workers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
China.
but it's going to be China.
Yeah, that's one of the bull cases for China, right? So you have a large growing consumer market, world's largest population, continued urbanization and infrastructure development, technological advancements, AI, renewables, EV, aiming to be positioning global in the world, strong government support, right? Global influence growing, educated workforce, and they still have FDI, right? So that's like the bull case.
Well, they don't have FDI. This is the problem.
Well, yeah, now, yeah.
This is actually a problem right now. They don't.
Okay. And the last episode, we talked about aging population decline as working against China, debt levels, geopolitical tensions, over reliance on possibly exports, policy and regulatory uncertainty, real estate market vulnerability is another one, right? So I don't know what you guys. I know June's very positive long term for China. You think-
China, I mean, okay, they make the cars, whatever. But what I think where the next big bucks will be spent for most consumers, right, would be the changing of their cars, right, from gasoline to electric.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I don't think those companies will be created in Malaysia.
Oh,
right?
no.
Yeah, like
But
because you're saying
we-
the context is what $10 billion.
Could be something in the supply chain.
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Okay.
After service,
Fair. Yeah, fair enough.
something along in the supply chain,
Okay.
the
That's
charging network, whatever. Even vehicle financing. Yeah.
But the point, the money will flow back to China if they're the one leading that.
Yeah, it depends on your country's policy on whether you have tariffs and whether you insist on things being assembled here.
Well, that's the geopolitical tension, right?
Yeah.
China has to contend with that.
I think Southeast Asia has a very strong history of having foreign car companies set up base here with a requirement of locally sourced parts. Yeah.
Yeah, with the Malaysian industry was different, right? They never forced to give up the full IP, and so that later,
Oh,
what China did.
We did.
But a lot of the I thought a lot
Fully
of the car
assembled
companies-
over here, you have a lot less import tariffs.
Yeah,
If you import everything and disassemble to build it over here, there's a different level of tariff. Fully imported, you have like 200-300%. So it's a very strong incentive to set up locally.
Did you guys see Tesla's share price last night?
So what?
no.
And they announced quarterly results, and the share price was down by 12%.
Who share?
And
Tesla.
Oh. And I think Elon Musk warned about a slowdown of the sector.
Yeah,
I think he also said without tariffs, the Chinese car companies would dominate.
Oh,
he said
that's
he,
He said that.
That's
He said
not
that.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
he said even with tariffs, still.
I think.
Well, but here's the thing. No, I agree with that. It's like, I mean, if you want to really talk about the bull and bear case,
Yeah.
PRC, I think the bull case is like almost, I don't remember the exact stat off the top of my head, but essentially like they have 20% of the global manufacturing
Yeah, something like
capacity,
that, yeah.
some ridiculous number,
yeah.
right? And they're the leaders, and there's only like I think 10 sectors in which the U.S. is still a leader in global manufacturing, and it's like biotech,
High tech stuff,
planes, and some other stuff, right? But like a lot of those other things, like day-to-day items,
consumer stuff,
stuff.
the power.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
engine.
China is crushing it, right? They have 70% of the. I remember they own 70% of the supply chain, I believe, for renewable energies in terms of like the battery, the mineral processing, all that stuff, right? And then I was having dinner with a friend from Singapore who works for a large solar cell manufacturing business that is essentially going to not exist anymore in a course of 2 or 3 months because the Chinese are just dumping. Their cost to produce and their subsidies makes their effective price so low that they can afford to just dump and essentially drive all their competitors out of business.
So that's not dumping, right?
That is dumping.
Dumping is you are selling below your cost of
cost,
manufacturing.
Yeah, that is. They're dumping.
But
Actually,
that's a outlet cost.
I don't know.
No. Well, I mean, I don't know exactly, but essentially so that's a fair point, right? He used the term dumping, right? So whether
Because it's above his cost.
yeah,
because
exactly,
the price.
exactly. Yes, that's fair. That's a fair point. So whether he used the dump as like the technical definition of the word dumping, or just like I feel like you're dumping. I didn't get into it, but my guess is it probably is dumping, like because these are heavily subsidized industries in the PRC, and they can afford to do this, right? And I was in Shanghai, like 3 or 4 months ago in September. And it was this weird thing happening. I'm like, oh, it's so quiet here. And I didn't know if it was quiet because there were less people, or afterwards I'm like, no, it's just quiet because all the cars are electric now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like no,
really
it's a
peaceful. The noise
real
pollution there
Yeah,
is
it's
so
a
amazing now.
it's a
It's so
real
nice.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you go and you're like,
So-
oh, it's so quiet, and then just like you realize like
This is what
half
peaceful
the
city
cars
can
are like electric
More than
now.
half.
More than half.
More than
Big
half.
cities
Yeah.
more than half.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And there are no bikes that are the bikes have been electric.
The bikes
for a
are
long
all
time.
electric now. Yeah, it's crazy.
But no motorbikes.
Let me give you an idea
Yeah.
of you said dumping, but I really believe they've brought cost to a much lower level. I recently watched this documentary about this this solar panel company,
Yeah.
and they're discussing now the prices are so low that we struggle to make it go even lower. So what we did was to shave off another 5 cents. Yeah, the only way we can do it is like have more robots, less humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and to shave another further 15 cents, we're gonna build this facility that's like 200,000 acres.
Yeah.
200,000.
Yeah.
Just to get that kind of savings. That's a skill they have to go to cut off the price.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
They have the skill to do that, and over
200,000 acres.
the course of last year, I've read quite a few reports from investor friends who went to Vietnam to investigate. I mean, the industrial sector there, and quite often the conclusion I have is
Too
that
small.
there's no domestic market. So whatever you do, you have to build a scale based on export, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, for you to have a full value chain to be at scale, it's just incredibly hard because for manufacturers in Vietnam, I mean, what makes most sense for them is to source for raw materials from China.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But then that's up to the governments, right? Like I think what you're talking about really raises concern for government to protect their own interests, right? So they want to develop their own industry as well. So tariffs probably should go up, right? They want to also develop their own industries, so they have to support that too. So
They have the big markets like Indonesia, right? They're banning the export of nickel, and they're banning, I think, export of lots of raw materials. And other countries go to WTO, and Indonesia being a large country, they just ignore. And there's something small countries can't afford to
do,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys see this mode? So this is basically a China mode, right? So this is lends to the bull case for China. I mean, to me, it's also a double-edged sword, though. Like when consumption goes down globally, then that's when they're hurt. They can't export, and that hurts their growth. Unless you say they're really fully transitioning where they're self-sufficient for their own economy, it doesn't matter. Or I mean, because U.S. just printed numbers that were really great. GDP was much higher, right, for the past quarter.
Yeah.
3.3%.
Still growing, huh?
Yeah, still growing.
Stock market is all-time high.
Consumers are still buying.
What is driving this?
must be consumers?
Consumption.
Consumption.
Okay.
So I mean, that helps the China case, right? But like, it could also, what if it downturns? Then it hurts the China case, right? Then also you have your geopolitical risks, like what we talked about. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I just find it amazing that
We
I think it's a different philosophy of how to manufacture, right? Things over there, you say state subsidies and focus, right? But I think we realize that there's something that needs to be done, and be produced, and it's cheaper to just scale it up to insane levels to get it done.
Yeah.
You know about the deterrent strategy, right?
No, what's that?
Like you make whatever sector you are in, the sector you are strong in, so unattractive for outsiders that nobody comes in.
For example?
For example, like now, so through TikTok's Chinese cousin, Douyin is trying to enter food delivery. And then Meituan is deliberately reducing their margins to an extent that it doesn't make sense for Douyin anymore. I mean, they would rather monetize their traffic into e-commerce rather than local services. And when the global market trends down, then you have players trying to do that. I mean, players who are more efficient in cost, that squeeze everybody else out. I mean, look at how Pinot is doing last year. It's
Isn't that
crazy.
just what like Dave's story about the solar company in Singapore? Same thing?
I mean, you would have a few players who have such cost advantage that they will squeeze other people out. I mean, we have that kind of downturn, and I think what it actually creates is market concentration.
Let's play contrarian. Where does China go wrong then?
I don't know. I think it's a very, very whole new business philosophy that how monopolies form. It's happening now, but in a very different and quick way.
Well, you're right. It's a different philosophy. I think their philosophy is there's two ways to look at this, or just two sides of the spectrum, right? I think the PRC has essentially rolled out the system of how do you even put this, like monopolies with government consent, right? They want monopolies to form, and then the government, the governing politics or body, wants to be involved in those monopolies, and that's therefore used as an instrument of control. Whereas in the U.S., there's still this for whatever reason, like there's a lot of reasons.
Plus, they got to make
There's-
money for shareholders.
Yeah, there's still
Right?
no.
So it's
they-
a bit different over there. They
no,
don't
the
have
U.S.
to care
has
about
this
shareholders.
No, the U.S. has this contrarian thing where a lot of their gut reaction is still big is bad, right? We don't want concentration of capital, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
still
So that's a
people
weird
like,
philosophy in a global context.
but that's what I'm saying. It's a philosophical difference, right?
Yeah.
So the PRC is like we want these large monopolies to form, and then we are going to get in there and control, and that's going to be one of the levers that we use to control whatever we want to control, right? Whereas in the U.S., there's still this like instinctual like
Competition
backlash.
is good.
Competition, yeah, they want to encourage competition, right? You can see that in the regular like where U.S. politics is going. Like Lena Khan, she's like rolling out all these FTC suits against various like large tech companies.
Deals,
Yeah,
deals,
yeah, right. And then like in the discourse of America, this is a big thing, right? Like Boeing has had a series of mishaps in the last couple.
planes.
Yeah,
A lot of chat about that.
Yeah,
about the
right.
quality
And-
going down. Huh?
Yeah, and a common thread that exists in that conversation is it's because they're a monopoly and they don't have enough competition, right? So these things are still discussed, whereas the Chinese side are just like, no, we're going to have like
It's
one
not
player.
logical to think that way. Just because there's a competition, you think quality will improve. It's not that. It's about like, well, what's the main philosophy driving, quality?
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
it's a fair point. Yeah, you can make an
Th-
argument.
That's like
yeah.
an ideology, that only competition guarantees quality.
It's like a Japanese like Batsu.
I think I'll be more worried if there are like 50 like plane manufacturers trying to compete on cost, right?
Yeah, for some things, it doesn't make sense to have a lot of competition.
It doesn't and doesn't, right? Like I think so good. Okay, so a good example of this is the U.S. Military industrial complex, the arms. No, this is a
Yeah,
real.
this actually is a good
This is
point.
this is a real thing, right? So pre Cold War, there were like I don't remember the exact number, like 30 or 40. So not pre Cold War, during the Cold War, there were like 30 or 40 arms contractors in the U.S. Right? And then after the Cold War ended, what essentially would happen was the U.S. government was like, "Hey guys, we don't need, this is post history, right? We're dominant. We don't need 30 or 40 arms manufacturers." And so then over the course of 20, 30 years, you have like this series of M&As. Now there's like basically like 4 or 5 left, right? And then and this manifests itself if you look at like the prices that the U.S. pays for its weapons. It's astronomical. Like what is it? What the simple stat that came out last year was like an artillery shell in Ukraine. like one of the simplest things. There's no technological innovation here, right? It's literally the same thing that it's been for the last like 80 years.
But you need a supply chain, the steel, the powder, the chemicals.
But this is the thing. Like they were saying, like Russia's cost to produce the exact same thing is like
$2,000.
1/10
1/10.
what the U.S. pays for it, right?
I mean, is that because there's lack of competition, or is that because for a long time
It
the
is lack of competition.
government thinks that it's actually okay to pay that?
No.
Or
No,
at least
but
people within the government thinks it's okay to pay
that's
that.
lack of
Over time,
competition.
yeah.
That's exactly
No,
lack
but
of
which one's the cause? Which one's the effect?
Yeah, so this is the problem, right? So the U.S. government does cost plus contracting. That's
Yes.
that's how those contracts are awarded, right? So, but they're also the only buyer. It's what is it called? It's like monopsony, where there's a single buyer to the ecosystem, right?
So if there are single buyer, there are 4 or 5 suppliers, that there should still be competition, right? I mean, the reason why there's no competition
Because it's corrupt.
yeah,
Look, there's no reason for a defense company to say that, okay, we can't pull all these materials from the market to make this product at the best cost,
Yeah.
right? With a small profit for our shareholders.
It's a cartel, but that's
so,
the thing.
So in the US, it's super corrupt. They got their hands, the military people, right? And the senators and the politicians, right? Are all working together to deliver something that's super high cost.
Yeah, to answer your question, right? The reason why there isn't is it's a cartel. What is it? Oligopoly, right? It's not quite monopoly yet, but it's an oligopoly, right? So you have like 4 or 5 players, and when you only have 4 or 5 players, it's easy to collude. It's like, oh, hey, you come over to my house, like I'll sell artillery shells, you get to sell the bomb.
It's nothing
you
about
get to
competition.
sell-
It's just corruption.
No, but that's it's the same thing, right?
why-
Like where you have, but it's much hard to collude when there's 40 or 50 players in the market, whereas when there's only 2. There's a huge difference, right? So you can't just say, oh, it's like those are unrelated.
So why can't I buy shares for like North Korea? It's cheap. I'm just asking.
North Korea will sell it to you.
because
They would.
You sanctioned them.
no, so this is back to the corruption point because there's like essentially it's an RFP process, right? They have this huge RFP process where there's like some bureaucrat that checks through a list of like I don't know, like 100 different things for something super simple, and basically the only people that can like fulfill that checklist of requirements are one of those 5 defense contractors that exist.
Yeah. So if there were like 40 to 50 players out there, and if that sort of procurement process persists, I mean, naturally this 40 to 50 will consolidate. I mean, it's not a stable state to have like a competition.
Probably. I think so.
No, but it existed. It existed during the Cold War for like 50 years.
It didn't last. Why didn't it last?
Because, well, I told you, because the U.S. government basically said we need to consolidate. You guys need to consolidate.
Yeah, the problem is the government.
Yeah, no, I agree. But this is monopolies. But that's the role of government. The role of government is to like decide whether or not monopolies can exist. This is exactly the point.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. Like okay. So there is a monopoly, right? In the US, you think it's back because they're going to set the prices super high and make things uncompetitive, right? But isn't it also possible that to have a natural monopoly and have government say your prices can't be that high? Can it? It only happens if things are not corrupt, right?
So I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because I think it really depends on the sector, right?
Yeah.
Because you could argue that the big tech companies are essentially monopolies, right? But the part where that still works is they deliver so much consumer surplus that it kind of doesn't matter, right? Because
What do you
they're
mean it doesn't matter?
so because their margins are so huge, right? And there's no actual costs. If you think about it, like to deliver a product, there's no cost, right? It's your server, it's like some admin
Efficient
somewhere,
point of scale, yes.
right? So for businesses that are tech related, or let me just phrase, businesses that are low marginal cost, you can still have monopoly state and deliver consumer surplus. That's still
The
possible.
consumer's not hurt from it.
Correct. So that's sort of the standard
more
the
wealth.
U.S. uses these days, right? It's like does consumer harm, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think for companies that actually have substantial input costs, a monopoly state is harmful to the consumer because you don't have enough surplus to essentially meet that, right?
Military is a good example.
Yeah, military is a good example of this. Yeah.
Waste all the tax dollars instead of putting it somewhere useful.
Yeah, I think that's a question of how the companies are run. Whether it's run for whose sake, who's the main stakeholder the companies run for.
Yeah, well, it's for the sake
shareholders.
of money and capital.
I mean, here you have two
That's always shareholders.
different parts of the world that has an aversion towards monopoly. One is by de facto communist, right? So they should hate companies and monopolies. But you just got to accept the fact that companies suck in all the capital and they need this scale to be the best. But the question is how do you make sure that
the wealth is transferred.
what their output, right, is priced at a reasonable level that is beneficial to the country or the people rather than just the shareholders.
That's exactly.
So it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy on how we treat monopolies.
That's exactly
and how to govern them.
I agree with you. That's completely my point. I'm saying it's a philosophical difference, right? The Chinese, from my assessment, says we consent to monopolies in the service of like promoting our socialist values, like the society that we want, right? Whereas the Americans are like West. We just say the West.
So they
like,
come a long way
we
from
promote
state
we promote no
monopolies.
monopoly for the service of like just making money. And these are separate things, right? I agree with you. It's about incentives and what your end goal is.
Yeah, you are the monopoly, and you know why you are the monopoly. So you take your position
Correct
where you should be.
Yeah, this is fair. This is a fair point. You need to know why you're the monopoly. Yeah, that's fair.
Well, it's interesting in the case of North Asian countries, like say Japan or Korea, with zaibatsus or chalbos. So also size of country matters. I think, for example, in America, you can't just have one conglomerate that does everything for your whole country. But whereas like South Korea, that's probably possible. Whereas
I don't know. They say during the Standard Oil years in the US and during the AT&T, those were the boom years, the best years. Because they were patriotic, industrialists, right?
True.
Yeah,
that's true. You're right. The Rockefellers,
And then now, there's a whole debate over the monopoly is a bad thing. Competition across all boards would generate the best outcome. I think it's a balance of both.
Maybe eventually, maybe at some point you need to accrue all that value in one point, and then you have to spread it, right? So, but I mean, it hasn't happened. Like in South Korea, you don't see them breaking up these. It's probably too hard to break up these giant companies, right?
No, it's just it's a maturity thing. South Korea only industrialized in the last 60, 70 years, right? It's after World War II that they industrialized, right? The U.S. industrialized in like the 1850s. If you look at that timeline, like Standard Oil, what is a big train company? JP Morgan, those like Carnegie, those guys were active in like the 1910s, 1920s. So there was like a 60-70 period where between like the start of industrialization to concentration, and then they were all broken up, right? And that was like a 70 year process.
It's almost like within a century.
Yeah, it's like a century. So I think it's I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying
yeah.
the context of history. It's I
There's-
don't think
there's
it's
room.
reasonable.
There's
Yeah,
room.
it's not saying it's impossible.
But they would say, but don't you think China would be too big just to have something like a Standard Oil, or is that what it is now? You think?
What do you think the
I
CCP
think-
is?
I think the oil companies are way bigger than Standard Oil, right? Any small gas company is way bigger than whatever was Standard
We don't
Oil.
think CSP as a company usually, but yeah, it's a good point.
I think it also depends on which sector you are in, right? I mean, for certain sectors, I mean, like tech, like social media stuff, where the marginal cost is naturally low, so it makes sense. I mean, sorry, it's not it makes sense, but the market will naturally evolve into something which is monopoly, oligopoly.
Yeah.
In sectors like F&B, I mean, anything
China
that becomes too big, it becomes unmanageable. So it's naturally that you can't form a monopoly. It's just not possible. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
communal kitchens in the past. Oh, yeah.
What's the fundamentals of the industry? I think it's just the nature of food business. You can't monopolize that, right? Can you? It's just-
I don't know.
it's
I think
inherently,
there
it's
needs
just-
to be a serious thought about antitrust and monopolies in the West, right? On how to accept it and think about it. Yeah.
But there is, yeah. This is.
I don't know what triggered the Standard Oil breakup. Was it some economics professor, from a new school of thought that said,
there
"Hey,
must have been consumer harm,
look,
right?
they are cartelling, they are price fixing, And,
That's a good question.
and
I don't remember the history. That's a good question.
My
actually.
guess would be there must have been consumer harm.
So why didn't they just tell the companies to fix their part and not break up? I mean, it's a different way of approaching the same problem.
So you have a situation,
what changes business.
and you deal with the situation, and because you have dealt with the situation, you learn something, and this thing becomes part of your rule book.
Okay,
And-
so
and-
so assume back then.
Yeah, this is how,
yeah.
how processes are built in companies, right? And after like 5-6 generations, where people look at the rule book saying, oh, it was decided in 1920s, it has always been
Yeah,
the
that's
case.
crazy.
But the thing is that if you ask everyone to start like coming back and questioning the fundamentals, then the whole society becomes unstable.
Yeah, but you should always reform your laws. Like okay, say for example, back then in Standard Oil, they were caught doing this, that. Their punishment was what? Oh, break it up. It fixed the problem. What's the punishment for that now over here, right? Let's say in China, that's corruption. You get shot. So it's enforcing the law over there.
No, you don't get shot. It's injectional. Yeah.
So here's something.
Something like that. It's a death sentence, for such a big amount.
Here's something interesting. So for Standard Oil,
So maybe that you need that to fix monopolies.
you were
hold
saying?
on, for Standard Oil, right?
Yeah.
So it was this. There was this actual big political movement against it because they were colluding with railroads and stifling competition. That's right. So there was a very
political-
big, no, but there's a very big public backlash that's allowed in the context of the American, system. Like I don't think you could really do that in China, right? Do you think you could just go up against the CP?
I mean, that
and
was
say-
the political solution. It came from the grassroots, and
It's
it was
grassroots, right? And then
Yeah.
well, also, there's room for people to voice up. You're
Yeah.
a minority who's getting hurt.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm the small company that can fight against this. Get people to come together. Then the Supreme Court decides, well, time to break up. So it's
That
just-
was the solution they proposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if the
But,
man,
could it be a different solution now, right? You could have a top-down view and said, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you so high?
But that only
Who's
works.
guilty?"
That only works like in China context.
No,
right?
it could work in the United States too.
US,
No, it could work in-
Why
it could work
not?
in the US.
How?
Oh,
Like,
you
explain to
can
me how.
prosecute. You can prosecute.
No, the FTC
broke
could
the laws,
change-
cartelling, pricing.
You'd have to put so
all
many
those are
interest
criminal
groups
offenses.
together for this to happen. No, it's not.
No,
it's a lot harder.
no, you don't. No, the FTC can do. They can change the standards. Absolutely. This is actually a big question, right? So in the U.S. with antitrust right now, because so if you go back, consumer harm has been the traditional standard of U.S. antitrust. Or
Yeah,
not
so the
one
FTC,
not-
FCC all take care
correct,
of this,
yeah.
right? The agencies.
The only not the only one, but it's a big one. It's a big whether or not consumer harm exists is like a big factor in whether or not a company gets broken up or not, right? And you're right, Junai, you're right. That has been the standard for, I don't know, like 70, 80 years, and they haven't changed it, right? Yeah. But then we're going back to the point about big tech is big tech produces so much consumer benefit that traditional standard of consumer harm doesn't actually apply. It's hard to apply that standard,
hard.
right?
Also-
So they have to change. So
Well, you're destroying a lot of value, I guess. if you-
correct.
yeah.
That's the thing. That's to June's point is that standard needs to be updated to something else. It needs to be looked at in a different lens at this point.
but the thing is that how was consumer harm defined? How was value destruction defined?
It's all subjective, right?
Oh, it was
Prices
projected.
are too high.
Typically, it's like pricing, bad
Market share.
service.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's it's
Or you're starting up a company and then you get stifled out.
yeah.
Remember Internet Explorer, with Microsoft?
Yeah. That was
Yeah,
another
it was-
example.
So that wasn't even something that I mean, they were so early to nipping that out. They didn't even know how Bill Gates will play it out yet.
Yeah.
Right? There wasn't much people harm in financial means, but it's just the theory of, it's going to become a monopoly, right? We've got to act now.
Yeah.
I find it weird.
Yeah, it's actually kind of ridiculous if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
In modern context, you would sell an operating system without a web browser. If you really think about it, it's like, what?
So it's just their competitors who successfully lobbied against them, right?
Yeah, correct.
Netscape and the rest.
Netscape, yeah.
Yeah. But is that the outcome that you want as I mean, you were still very dominant, so you probably didn't think about how this will play out for the rest of the world.
So let's
right?
let's recap. So what did we cover, and what are we leaving on the table to talk about in the future?
Oh, interesting.
Are we
I
done?
don't know.
You don't
No,
want
we're not
to
done.
talk about DEI?
No, we did.
I'm having fun talking
recap.
about this.
I want to
It's
recap this
interesting.
first. So, let's put our thoughts together so we don't get accused of being in a bar again.
So I think monopolies, are good and bad, right?
Yeah.
And the ways to tell the monopoly to do something to fix their behavior, right, could be more rationally thought about, right? Rather than just saying you're creating a monopoly bad, break up or fine or whatever.
Yeah.
In the global context, yeah, got to think, this monopoly could be good for the country, not so good for the domestic market, right? How do we set the incentives of what should be done as a business?
I find, in general, like as a mental exercise, that when people say that this should be the way, this causes harm, or this should be banned, it should not be allowed, and quite often, it's good mental exercise to actually try to understand the rationale and how this thing came about, and whether it just still makes sense. I think for us, each as individual, it probably makes sense for you to look at the market and try to understand how things came to be. Then you can make a decision whether it's something that you should follow or something you should disrupt. I'm not advocating that whatever that's been done is wrong or whatever, because there are nuanced, complex issues. But having that understanding, I think for listeners, viewers, as an individual, I think it probably helps you. Your life makes your life sadder. But yeah.
Dave, closing thoughts on this?
No, I agree. That's fine. I don't need to recap.
Okay. All right. So DEI. Let's do this last topic then. So
what is the
diversity,
Equity and
equity,
inclusion.
and inclusion. So originally, it's a framework or strategy used for like companies or organizations. The context ensures a diverse group of people, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, are represented and fairly inclusively included within the organization. So this approach, is supposed to aim to create environments where everyone feels valued and has equal access to opportunities. So I think the original context was aimed at, providing an equal opportunity. And then there's this one line of thought where I think, some percentage of liberals have hijacked it, where the argument is this, right? Due to systemic, injustices for certain minorities, that they want to focus it as equal outcomes instead, right? So the question is, Dave had a lot to say about this, I think.
Oh, we said a bunch of it
Right.
last
Yes,
episode.
yes.
Yeah,
sounds about already.
we talked about it briefly on the tail end of last episode, but I wanted to provide a platform, discuss what the definition is, right? So to me, what exactly is DEI to you guys, and what are the arguments of both sides?
So you want us to argue against ourselves?
I believe in merit, so best person for the job.
Yeah, I think we're
And
most.
if the pool is small now, then you can't shortcut it. You got to work on how to make a bigger pool of competent people you can choose from. And that's the best selection. Just having quotas for you would just underperform because you're not selecting the best people for the right role.
But
Yeah.
last episode we did talk about so it's interesting. The American case will be very different from say the Malaysian case, because we did talk about last episode the Malay dilemma and the new economic policies that came after the racial riots focused on equal outcomes by raising the disparity between the Malays and the other races, and in fact you said it did work,
Yeah, of course, it did.
right? So but then it's kind of counter to what you're saying now.
No, I think he's saying the same. I think he's intellectually consistent.
Is it?
Yeah. So I think to break down the case, right? Like most DEI, I think where a lot of people, the usual path of criticism from modern DEI in the West is the claim that DEI is about the quality of outcome versus the quality of opportunity,
I
right?
think that's how it evolved. In
But that's
the media narrative.
But in the media narrative, that's kind of where it is
Yeah.
now. And I'm in June's camp. I think my critique of modern DEI is you're trying to so let's just define this, right? The DEI and the definition of equality of outcome is you're trying to solve for a problem on the tail end as opposed to addressing the root causes of the issue, right? If I'm sitting here at Harvard or any of these Western elite institutions and I'm saying like, I need to have affirmative action essentially, right? Like I need to have X number of this race and Y number of that race and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't address the root cause of the problem, right? The root cause is these people of certain minority groups or certain subgroups probably didn't have access to quality education when they were young. And this is a very just ham-fisted way of addressing the problem. And I think that's essentially what you're saying. It's right. If you want to like produce true equality, you need to start from the beginning and make sure everyone has the same access to all the same, or like a baseline of, because it's impossible to have true equality, right? But like fundamental baseline things that are all like covered for by everyone, right? And that's not even just education. That's like healthcare, that's food, that's housing security, right? And then if you have those set, then you can have true, equality.
Let me play devil's advocate. Like, so we've all run companies, and we know that to solve problems to get to the next level of your goal, you can't necessarily go to every root cause because it's maybe many layers of solving down. But then sometimes you can just solve 1 or 2 layers down, just temporarily, until you could keep moving the company, then eventually, hopefully, over a longer period of time, get to root cause, right? So don't you think it's still progress if you can still raise? It's the case like the Malays. Like you still raise it, but eventually you have to go back to equal opportunities to be competitive in the modern day. But it did help, right? And
Okay, there's equal opportunities, there's equal outcome, there's also like free choice, right? Equal choice. I think let's just say for gender, fundamentally, male and females choose to be in different professions. True.
Yeah,
like engineering is lean towards male.
I agree with you.
I mean, the statistics will show
Healthcare is lean towards females, right? Education is more towards females, less towards males.
Well, if you want to be
So
even,
no matter what, you won't have like the same pool to choose from that's split equally. Yeah. Some sectors will be dominated by males. So when you try to have some a quota on a pool that's 90% male, how are you going to get the best people? So I think I don't think there's equal opportunity. People have different choices.
I agree with you. Yeah. There's an element of self-selection.
So how do you say should we even out the choices? You gotta somehow make it such that half the people half of this profession has 50% females. They really want to be there.
Okay, so like say for software engineering,
yeah,
all these women want to join it, but then we should not care. We should not try to help.
I don't think that there'll be a case where like out of 10 people where 5 and 5 would be male and female.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
I mean,
it won't be unless you really work hard to get them to choose that.
So we're saying two different things then, right? So we're saying like you can provide more avenues for women to maybe get into, say, like software engineering, but then it's not necessarily.
I think equal opportunity is always there.
Yeah.
But then can you compel them to make the choice?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But then for the people who are making that choice, it's very hard, no?
Is it?
Is it?
I don't know.
I mean, software engineering, is
so.
it? I mean,
no. I think if
why?
you're competent, you get picked.
Yeah. Why? I mean, most like 60% of college graduates in the U.S. are female now.
Yeah.
Why?
So do you think that trend will change over time?
No, I'm just saying like what?
No,
but that's like a reductive argument.
In very different fields, right? 60%
Yeah.
fields.
You're right, but I think that's put to June's. Like, let's not even talk about software engineering. Let's just talk about like manual labor.
Okay, sure.
Right? If I want to go cut down some trees, and then the argument is like, oh, I want 50% of my tree cuts to be women.
Yeah.
But then like women are smaller.
You give them the choice, they won't take it.
They're weaker. They don't. It's just there are structural reasons that have nothing to do with like racism or sexism about why people lean towards certain professions.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my point.
Well, yeah, people are fundamentally different is the point.
Yeah, correct.
And you play to your strengths.
Yeah, correct. Like, oh, just because I want to be an NBA player,
you
doesn't mean I can be an NBA player, right? It's a ridiculous argument.
All right, John, jump in. What do you got?
My team now is about 85% female.
Okay.
And used to be 92%, but we tried really hard.
You put a quota.
Did you put a quota for males?
No, we didn't.
Just weren't qualified the males.
We didn't put a quota. We just said that maybe we should try to. I mean, because there is an issue that you see this imbalance been manifested, and of course, I mean, the more it persists, the more it's uncomfortable for sort of male applicants to join, right? I mean, look at
Self-fulfilling at that point.
it becomes self-fulfilling. So is
But
that,
there's got to be a pool of males that are extremely highly qualified for certain positions, right? But they're going to be naturally excluded then.
possible? I don't know. It's complicated, but we said okay. I mean, we didn't think much, but we just asked everyone in office saying that, hey, do you want more male colleagues? And everyone said
Of
yes.
course, the girls are going to say yes.
Why did they say yes?
Yeah, why did they say yes?
I'm not going to question why. Yeah, but
Why do you think you became so female-oriented in the first place?
I don't know. It just happened that way. It just happened that natural selection, right? So people
think
came,
it's
some people
subconscious
stayed, and
bias in
some.
How did you start? Did you start with more women? Because how did your company start? It was just you and your wife, I assume, right? Or
No. She joined much later. So we started with actually more guys.
So that's interesting, right?
Yeah. So, but evolved, and I think for whatever job that historically that has been with the organization, our best employees who stick with us are who are still with us after so many years. Is female university graduates who started as intern and decide to stay.
And is there? So that's an interesting point.
But sample size is small, so I wouldn't draw any conclusion to that.
No, but I think what you're saying, there's an element. So one of the arguments for DEI is typically what happens is people like to hire people that look like themselves, act like themselves.
That's
And
actually true, though, right?
no, which is actually true.
Yeah.
I like to hire.
I noticed that philosophically from companies I've built.
Yeah.
I tend to-
Most
people
media
that really
companies
get
are
along with.
females, so
No. But
Most
we're
what?
not a media.
Media companies.
We're talking about.
I'm
just
not a media company.
it's somewhat media.
He's a consulting business.
It's consulting, but you have a media arm, right?
That's like a channel.
Yeah, that's
okay.
channel, like
That's a
that EOA.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Alex.
But the question is are you looking for diversity for the sake of diversity, or do you think your performance could be improved if there's more men in your team? That's a question.
That's a good question.
No, it's something that we didn't think deep
Yeah, I
about.
think you're trying to experiment that, right?
We're just trying to experiment because we don't know. I mean, we can philosophically debate that into the death, but the truth is that we don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
So what are the implications then of the current DEI, and then like what?
So the current implications of Western DEI is you're actually lowering the standard for everyone. And the example that I like to use a lot is California math.
Yeah.
Like 2 years.
The gifted programs.
Yeah, 2 years ago or however long ago, right? California basically banned or they canceled advanced math because the argument at the time was advanced math is systemically racist. Because no, that was the argument. I didn't
Why?
make because certain groups can't afford advanced math tutors.
So
Socioeconomic.
they just remove advanced math and pretend this thing doesn't exist.
Correct. Whereas if they actually wanted to do something about it, they would be like, let's increase funding for math tutors for everyone, right? That's where equality of outcome gets you. Is like instead of like that's my biggest criticism is equality of outcome gets you to a place where there's no advanced math, right? And if you don't have advanced math in a society, that basically means your society's toast.
Did that happen in the Cultural Revolution?
Yeah, of course. They killed all the
They
scholars.
wiped out everything.
They wiped out all the scholars. Started everyone from zero.
I mean, when this whole sort of movement in the West, I mean, whatever you label it, right? I mean, came about a few years ago, and the prevailing argument, I mean, among intellectuals in China is that
It looks like this, huh?
this feels like red guards to us.
Yeah, a bit. It is. Yeah.
Because they're enforcing one narrative, and anything that goes against that narrative gets shouted at, gets destroyed, gets cancelled or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the more interesting question is how we got here, right? Because I think like DEI, like most things, started with good intentions.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there were,
Well,
but then like
that's a very good point, yeah.
so but then I don't have an answer, right? This is not something I've really thought about. But then this is more a question for everyone. It's like, how do you think we got there? Because at some point, I think no one that was in DEI 20 or 30 years ago were like, we want to cancel advanced math. That was not their intent.
Yeah, correct.
But then how do we get here? That's what I don't understand.
My best guess is, I think we were rooted in much simpler thinking and less complexity. Because like with the evolution of technology and media, information flying so fast, right? I think back then we optimized on what we knew, and it was the obvious and simple thing was around race, and it was a simple policy around race to improve the things for those certain races. But that just needs to be updated in a modern context, but we never updated it, right? Because it works. I think it did work up to a certain point, but then we get to a point beyond that where it's just gone bananas, right? So I think it made sense up to a certain point. It was working probably up to a certain point, I think certain classes and races improve from it, but then beyond that, then
Gone bananas.
But how do we get from affirmative action to advanced math is racist? That's where that
very
falls
specifically.
Yeah, that's where that falls apart for me. Like there's something. Yeah, I agree with you. At the time, it's convenient, right? Using race as a filter,
simple.
it worked, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, how do we get from there to where we are now?
I think we talked about it a little bit. It's just there's just too much money and people have too much time. They're making up problems to fight, right? Social justice warriors.
So people, who are these people?
I mean, there's a whole class of like consultants that do this.
Like
The actual jobs.
What do you
that
think?
people-
There's an actual industry around this.
Yeah, but there are people who actually hire them, right?
Yeah, that's my question. Is how do we get there? Yeah.
Why do these people hire them?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking this
maybe
question.
It's the spirit of California hippie liberalism.
I don't know. This is what I'm asking. It.
Do you think it's because there's a certain narrative being formed, and people who sort of support this narrative gradually control the discourse, controls the,
Media?
for the lack of better word, mainstream media,
Maybe.
and then that narrative gets amplified. I mean, whoever who supports this narrative becomes sort of amplified because
That's part of
their
it.
voice
It's vocal
gets
minority, for
covered.
sure.
Yeah,
It's a vocal minority.
and it's a vocal minority. I mean, and these people.
But it does have outsized impact though. It does matter.
It does matter
Like people-
because these people don't understand why people vote for Trump.
But I think So this.
It's red that they don't understand. And,
You're right. You're right. So a lot of this actually stems from Western universities. The university system has always been progressive since the 60s. It's always been like a bastion of progressive values for the most part. There's always exceptions, right? And that's actually where a lot of this. You're right. That's where a lot of this stems from. Like you get someone that comes into university in a liberal environment, a progressive environment. They are in many ways indoctrinated. Maybe indoctrinated is not the best word, but when you're young
They are
and impressionable, right? And these people, when they age out, they typically become like the elite.
And indoctrinated.
The elite
old
of
person.
society.
Yeah.
People control media, politics, etc. But my question is like, how did it get so aggressive, right? I understand the root cause, like how this chain of like people move through the system, right? But then like, how did the ideology become so aggressive or so distorted?
Incentives, right? The power. They got power. They maintained it.
I think it's self-fulfilling, right? I mean, if you move towards a certain direction, left or right, and you get reinforcement from the media saying that what you're doing is
More
right,
attention.
And
You want to
then-
stay
It's a
there.
loop.
Yeah, fair enough,
Yeah.
right? And then the
Exacerbates.
bar keeps moving. Yeah,
the bar keeps moving.
fair
That
enough.
Well, a lot of the politicians who probably profess it is just they're talking to a base, right? That's how they get elected to stay in power.
that's also why dictators, many of them start with good intentions of fighting for liberation for the
No, you're right. You're right.
It's true.
Mao Zedong is a great example.
Yeah, fighting for the liberation of the nation. Then gradually, around him, he becomes echo chamber, and whatever he does is right. When he moves towards a certain direction, people tell him that okay,
Human nature.
yeah, what you're doing is right, and then he moves further and further, and then becomes
Fair. That's a fair.
becomes bad.
Yeah,
But-
that's probably true.
But that's probably why. I mean, now when I look at the discourse now, I start to sort of believe in democracy again because you see when it becomes a little bit too to the extreme.
Yeah.
Then you see the. I mean, now you look at the narrative in the US. I think there's a backlash. I mean, whether the backlash is right or not, I can't make a judgment. But it's pulling the society from one extreme back towards the center.
Yeah, I agree. It's a cycle. Yeah.
Can we apply the lens in the Asia context? We don't care about this because, or are there actual issues here in Asia?
I never read the Malay dilemma. What does it say?
June?
I think we haven't gone to the extremes yet. We're still quite rooted in the center.
You don't think Malaysia is quite extreme in its racial politics?
No,
No, it's a serious question.
Yeah.
no, it didn't get to the point of going bananas. I think, right?
Yeah.
The NEP, whatever it is, it was never about taking someone else's share from the pie. You know, it's always
improving.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always
improving.
focused on like okay, every addition we add to the new pie, you know, more goes here rather than taking away from someone. There's been the policy.
They did take away from the poor minorities.
No,
Did they?
Brain
they?
drain. Brain drain, right? Well, I mean, not like
Yeah,
literally.
brain drain
It's like
is an
it's
effect.
the effect. It's the
That's an
effect. Sorry, it's the
effect.
effect.
Yeah.
It's the effect.
but
like,
the
those
base
people-
policy has always been
correct.
quite censored.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah,
You're right.
there will be no reallocation of the cake, but no, just how the new cake will be distributed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I
then
see
you
what
can-
you're saying. Right.
But
okay.
also you can compare it to the Singapore case, right? Lee Kuan Yew, and then he focused what? His policies focused on equal opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He focused on equal
well.
opportunities. He focused on pragmatism, and
Yeah.
he focused a lot on meritocracy.
Yeah.
And he made it the fundamentals. So of course the problem. I mean, not the problem, but the challenge now is that you remember in early days he controlled media.
Oh,
He
yeah.
made sure that foreign newspapers and foreign agencies didn't have circulation in Singapore. But now, I mean, people have access to all kind of information. I mean,
Dangerous.
do people?
Singapore is very liberal now. There are a lot of young people that got into all this
the
Western
PAP
press,
lost a
right?
lot of power and seats over time.
But the truth we don't know. I mean, nobody has done like thorough check on a society, like monitoring everyone's thought. I mean, that would be a bit dangerous to begin with. So nobody knows how exactly the sort of the narrative or people's mindset has shifted. That could be dangerous, but I mean, it's harder and harder to navigate for
Think the CCP or NSA do that?
I mean, the thought police doesn't exist, right?
No, I think the press over here in the region can't go too extreme to the left or right. You know,
Why?
it's just not in the culture, and there are laws, you know, that says you're the press, you're supposed to be factual.
structurally.
We have experiences in the past where it went to left or right, and there were riots.
Yeah.
So I think we have this
They clamp down harder.
this culture over here
There's more censorship.
where newspapers just can't say whatever they want.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the sensitive things like gender, race, religion.
Oh, that's specifically for Malaysia. Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
This is
very-
Singapore too, you know.
controlled.
I think it's very sensitive to say things about religion in media. Very sensitive.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what about the other countries like Indonesia,
Same.
Vietnam, Philippines?
Same. Philippines maybe the least
Yeah.
in Southeast Asia because they're most
More
Americanized.
and more American.
Yeah.
Mm.
That plays a big role into making sure this amplification effect doesn't become too crazy.
So there's a government oversight that kind of manages that, but that also means like lends to corruption too. Like there's certain things you probably do want to be able to talk about, right?
I don't know. I don't think anyone's. I mean, if it's proven itself, right, for the past, like the last two prime ministers, was because of the press that all this corruption came to surface, right?
That's true, actually.
So you can't say it didn't play that role.
You're
you
right.
know?
You're right.
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate our press over here.
Malaysia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Compared to every time I look at the Economist, it's like, oh my god, something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that Gell-Mann what effect, huh? That
The what?
What?
what was it? I shared the Gell-Mann something effect.
I didn't read it. Yeah,
Oh,
please.
no, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's just that if you're in the know and you know something very deep down, and there's this article that comes out in media, and you straight away recognize it for this is factually wrong. It's no way correct. Yeah, I'm an expert at this. I know what it is, and it's definitely not right. And then the other articles in the same media, why would you give it the same amount of trust?
Oh.
It's
right.
It's not the government amnesia effect.
Yeah.
You just forget that they're not credible, but you apply the same level of trust to all the other things that they make.
Yeah,
Doesn't make sense.
That's true.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying. That's what it's called, the Gell-Mann what?
Gell-Mann something amnesia effect.
Okay.
Amnesia.
Yeah, because it's amnesia. You basically just forget that you just discounted this article by someone in the same paper.
But I mean,
And right away, you give all the trust in the world for what they write next on a different topic.
why?
Doesn't make sense. Does it?
No.
Okay, so they write an article where you know it's not true.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And you tell yourself, oh, this is not true.
Yeah.
Then the next article, you don't know whether it's true or not because you're not an expert, right? But you assume it's true. So
Why would you do that?
that's the
the
paradox. That's the effect. It's the government amnesia effect. So it's basically saying we give media way too much stress, right?
Way too much
Or
trust or
whatever
way
they
too much
write.
stress?
Trust.
Trust.
Yes.
I-
It's a fallacy that people should recognize that because something is wrong, right? The other things are likely to be wrong or not to be trusted, right? Yeah.
Most people are not critical thinkers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
That's why it's
easy
fallacy.
to follow.
and no, I mean, because critical thinking is hard. I mean, if I had a choice, I don't want to do it. I mean, I just want
That's
to
the whole point of
relax.
media, The media is supposed to be, critical thinking for you.
No.
Yes, it is.
That's not. I mean, like,
Then it goes back to our discussion about competition, right? If you are in a competitive media environment, I mean, you form a narrative. Sort
Yeah.
of that's
I mean, like, if you try to actively consume media in that way, it's just too. You try and do it. Try to always make sure your media diet is very balanced,
You
right,
can't.
center. Then critically analyze it. You can't.
Yeah, you don't want to. It's impossible.
It's not. Yeah, you
Yeah.
just you don't consume that way.
It's also too much work.
Yeah, it's too much work. I
No one
tried
has
it at
time
one
for that.
point. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Like,
But then that's the problem nowadays for media, right? Because I mean, journalists working for media, they have to cover so many different topics, and naturally they don't. I mean, and there's so much information they need to process to form a narrative. I mean, of course, it's easier to access information nowadays, but it's also like I mean, the people working in media, they're also overloaded with information, and they are competing with other sources of information that people are receiving. So naturally they started. I mean, without them realizing that, they are probably gravitating towards certain things. Like yesterday, I was reading this report. I think in the BBC News, right? They were saying that they're talking about this plane down in Russia, which supposedly carried the Ukrainian prisoners of war. It only started getting the facts like in a 6th or 7th paragraph. The first 5 paragraphs, Russia has a history of lying,
Yeah, you paint a picture first.
You paint a picture first, and maybe it's not intentional, but
No, it's probably intentional for the business model.
it's 100% intentional.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it could
BBC?
be.
This is how-
It could be someone really believes in this.
The writer.
No, it's no. I
Well,
know.
it has to go through the editor too. So
Yeah,
he
no,
knows how
it's
to
no, it's
optimize
just
that.
it's. But here's the thing, right? Like it's storytelling.
Yeah.
Like the thing about news is essentially worthless the moment it exists, right? As soon as one person covers it,
Oh yeah.
then it's essentially worthless, right?
Then you need
the
to have opinions, to have
correct,
narratives.
correct,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
The only way to add value in a media organization, if you're doing like something news related, is to like, yeah, exactly what you said. You have to add this layer of like context and whatever context that is, right? And then I think the problem here is most modern media organizations,
Have become op-eds.
yeah, they're op-eds,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they become op-eds. They understand what their readers like, and then they cater to that audience, right?
that's
And
what
this
gets
is,
them paid.
and so that's what I'm saying. It's an incentives question, right?
So I guess.
And
there
I don't
needs to
agree with
be-
you about-
It needs to be new laws in place, to have. You're a publisher. You're a news company. You have to report news and not op-eds, right?
No, but I don't think it should be.
Yeah, your sources must be verified. You can't make things up.
No, but
It's hard. It's
you
super
can-
hard.
you can-
Super
you
hard.
can't-
Super
It
hard.
used to be that way, I think. In the
No, you used to.
It's-
I mean,
no.
Things
you
are simpler,
you
probably.
used to. You need to have like 2 sort of independent sources. But I mean,
Yes.
come on.
And the
it's-
editor's job is to make sure the sources are
Information is
true.
moved too
But that
fast.
shouldn't be a government thing, right? That should just be a
No,
that should be
it
that should
should
be
be
market
a-
driven.
Actually,
It should
yeah,
just
there
be
should be
they should
incentives. There should be incentives
they
of
should stop. You should
You say market driven, but it's taking too long, right? Why is Alex doing this to deliver some alternative point of views compared to MSM?
So you were saying that you don't agree with certain things I said?
Yeah.
No, I think like in terms of back to the point, right? Like
Yeah.
if you think about the way a news organization is structured, that's like typically they're specialized, right? You have like a tech guy, you have like a politics
Yeah,
guy,
correct.
right? And that's actually their entire job, right?
correct.
So I don't think it's them being overloaded with information. I think it's them catering to what they think their readers or what their audience wants.
Yeah.
So it's not an input thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an input.
I
thing.
think we've
That's-
read a
that's
lot
where I
of
disagree with you.
a lot of testimonies from reporters, right, who just detest this profession now because compared to what it was a few days. I mean, if you read what Seymour Hersh has said about the state of media now, right, he explicitly says now it's all about narratives and propaganda, what the editors want.
Yeah.
Well, that's the rise of Substacks and
Yes,
podcasts.
yes. So he says, personally, it's a very different world compared to back then, or how journalism has evolved into whatever it is now.
Yeah, correct.
So how do you correct this?
You can't.
You can depend on the market, but I don't
Do-
think
do-
they're going
no,
down.
there's
No, you can't.
Do we need
They
to?
are. They are.
You mean you can't correct the
Actually,
existing
the market
institutions?
is correcting.
Yes.
They have less and less
There's new-
readership.
There's new platforms.
All MSMs have less and less
But-
readership.
but
Yeah,
distribution
yeah. So
points.
yeah, exactly. So this all goes back to distribution, right?
Yeah,
If you think about the history of media and how this evolved, right? The only reason there were these common narratives like 30 or 40 years ago is because there were only 2 or 3 operations in each market, right? The newspaper is constrained by the distribution, right? You get the newspaper that operates in your market, and maybe if you're like really worldly, you'll subscribe to the New York Times, right? You can probably get the New York Times delivered, but usually you're consuming local news, right?
Yeah,
Local TV, local radio, right? And then the internet came along and it opened up access to infinite
Everything.
media, right? And now you can choose. You can like pick and choose like what you want to consume, which is arguably better because it's like, oh, these are the things that I like. Right? If you think about like audio is a great example, right? Like before when we were kids, you used to make playlists for your friends
Mixtapes.
or mixtapes. Yeah, the same thing. It's a mixtape, right? Now everyone has a playlist by default because you can just go and you choose, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that's been driven by progress and technology. You can't put that back in the box. You can't go back to like monoculture, it doesn't exist anymore. Or it's a very, very difficult. There's only like one or two sources left monoculture left, right? And that's like sports and Taylor Swift right now.
No, well,
Right? And so the what I'm saying is like to Alex's point, actually, the only way to like go back is you just have to raise everyone's level of critical thinking to be able to like digest, or right? You have to like put more work into it.
But that's the rise of, the technology also allows more proliferation of niche content.
That's my point. Exactly.
So then you just,
everyone
can focus on that.
Everyone curates their own.
Yeah. So there is there is, but like it's
not.
There
but
used to
it's
be
not.
a time where a parent would say to me or my dad, read the paper, believe what the paper says. And now the parents are saying, no, don't read the papers. Some things they say are not right.
But that's arguably good because a
crazy.
lot of the times when you read the paper back then was also a lie. Like what was it? Gulf of Tonkin. That was reported in the news, and then that was just a complete lie, and that was used as the catalyst for invading Vietnam. Right? So it's not objectively a bad thing. Same thing with WMDs. Iraq, WMDs. We have to go to Iraq, and then that was 2001, 2002, whatever that was, right? And look how that turned out. It was like trillions of dollars spent, like hundreds of thousands of people died. And
the same machine helped fix his Bush's reputation.
So you see, critical thinking has been hard, and it's still hard.
It's not for everyone, I think.
And
even if it's for someone, right? You don't put
There's a
it to everything you read.
philosophy
You,
I mean,
you don't analyze everything you read.
It's not necessarily. I find it interesting exercise for myself, but quite often you don't need to analyze everything because you don't have that much mental capacity. You also don't have that much time. I mean, we're in Asia, we need to make money, right?
yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. To close out, what's the any if you're an organization or a business, or what can we do with DEI then? Pragmatically, what can we do based off what you guys said?
I mean, if you really care, just invest in your local communities.
Yeah.
No, really, because
For example,
it starts with your local community. If you really care about DEI, right, and you work in the low disadvantaged community, or you're based there, then you reinvest in your communities.
So like volunteer, actually vote, or do grassroots organizations?
Yeah, we're talking about individuals. Are we talking about companies? Are we talking
both? Yeah.
Yeah, volunteer at schools, go tutor underprivileged kids. That's the most
Or if
effective
you're
way.
a business,
And also
you don't care about diversity, then you just hire for.
if you're a business, you have capital, you can invest, right? You should invest in what you can control, right?
Correct.
Because
Yes,
the
correct.
further
Only
away from
you
your
know.
control, the more you abstract it, the less you can actually control.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Right.
So the more that you can actually do something that has direct impact, the more.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, it sounds stupid.
Yeah.
The more impactful things you do, the more impactful you will be.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, when you run a relative like small business that like what I'm doing, just make sure that the people who choose to join you get better off because of this journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Then things will sort out themselves if everyone does that.
Yeah. Okay. June, any final words?
Yeah, I think that's the right approach. Hire the people that's best for the company. You shouldn't rush to fill in a quota. I guess that's the wrong way to go about it.
Okay, guys. I think we're good. We had a good time.
So shall we go and talk to the building owner about the car park?
Yeah, I need to go have a
All right,
haircut
guys.
now.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
All right,
We'll
thank
see you
you.
next time. Bye.
Bye.
A bar talk.
It's a bar talk. Yeah, who's that guy that called you guys out? He's like,
I mean, what are those haters, right? Who brings like so irrelevant things to conversation just to make himself sound really smart. Okay,
but why is he doing that on a channel with 100 subscribers? It makes it like it's kind of a waste of his time too.
relax. Things grow.
No, I'm saying for him.
Alex has the highest compounded growth rate. Growth rate in percentage terms out of all the channels out there.
I'm 100% sure that's not true.
Yeah, of course there is. 4 to 8, 8 to 16. That's like 100% week on week.
That's 100%.
Yes.
100% channels.
Going much faster than everyone else. Trying to motivate him.
Okay.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. You're growing.
Ready?
I'm saying,
No, this is gonna be such a shit show.
It's okay, bro. We're all here.
Yeah.
Relax.
No, like that glasses dude made me feel self-conscious. Now I want to make a good product. So fuck him.
Oh, a glass man.
Right? I want to come with data and facts, not just opinions.